The adoption committee laughed when the retired widower said he wanted all 5 children. But when they opened his financial records, the room fell completely silent. The wall clock ticked at 6:30 a.m., same as every morning. Harold Bennett sat in his leather armchair, coffee growing cold beside him. His eyes fixed on Margaret's photo on the mantel, her last Christmas, smiling despite the cancer. 3 years, he muttered, running a hand through his silver hair. The house answered with silence. The morning light filtered through the bay windows, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. Harold's shoulders slumped as he reached for the morning pills, the new white one for his heart joining the familiar row of supplements. His phone buzzed. Dr. Patterson's office. Mr. Bennett? Just confirming your appointment for 2 p.m. today. I'll be there, Harold replied, his voice rough from disuse. The medical center bustled with life when he arrived. Young mothers corralled energetic children. Elderly couples held hands. Harold sat alone, watching a family of 5 squeeze onto a small couch, the kids giggling as they practically sat on top of each other. Mr. Bennett? The nurse called. Her smile was practiced but kind. Dr. Patterson's office felt colder than usual. The doctor studied his charts with a furrowed brow. The tests show some concerning results, Harold. Your heart condition, while not immediately life-threatening, requires attention. Have you considered moving to a retirement community? Someone to look after you. Harold's jaw tightened. I'm perfectly capable of living independently, doctor. Of course, but at 68, living alone. The doctor paused. Do you have anyone checking in on you regularly? Sarah comes by. The social worker, Harold added at the doctor's questioning look. Weekly visits. Good. But maybe it's time to consider Dash. I don't need a nurse, Harold cut in. Or a retirement home. The drive home felt longer than usual. Harold's hands gripped the steering wheel as Margaret's voice echoed in his memory. We should have tried harder for children, she'd said during one of her last lucid moments. The house is too quiet. We did try, Maggie, he'd answered, holding her thin hand. For years. Promise me you won't let it stay quiet forever. The memory faded as Harold pulled into his driveway. The 2-story colonial loomed before him, windows dark despite the afternoon sun. Inside, his footsteps echoed on hardwood floors. The doorbell rang at precisely 4 p.m. Sarah stood on the porch, her social worker badge gleaming. Harold, how are you today? Her enthusiasm never wavered, even after 2 years of weekly visits. Fine. He stepped aside to let her in. Sarah settled into her usual spot on the couch, pulling out her tablet. Any thoughts about those community programs I mentioned last week? The senior center has wonderful Dash. I saw Dr. Patterson today. Harold interrupted. Heart condition? Sarah's smile faltered. Oh, Harold, is it serious? Not immediately. He sank into his armchair. But he suggested a retirement home? That's a bit extreme. There are other options. Sarah hesitated. Have you considered fostering? We're always looking for stable homes, especially for older children. Harold snorted. Who'd give children to a man my age? You'd be surprised. Your experience could be valuable. And Sarah glanced around the empty house. Sometimes the best medicine is having a purpose. After she left, Harold sat at his computer. The cursor blinked on the search bar. Adoption requirements, senior citizens. Hours passed. Stories of older adoptive parents filled his screen. His eyes burned as he read about sibling groups, harder to place because agencies wanted to keep them together. The next morning, he found himself parking outside the local orphanage. The building was cheerful enough, with colorful murals and a well-kept playground. Can I help you? The receptionist eyed him suspiciously. I'd like information about adoption. Mrs. Chim will be with you shortly. Harold waited, watching through a window as children played outside. 5 children caught his attention, 4 girls and a boy, clearly siblings from their interaction. The oldest girl helped the youngest with her shoelaces while the others played nearby, always within her sight. Mrs. Chin appeared, a folder in her hands. Mr. Bennett, please come to my office. He followed, but his eyes stayed on the 5 siblings until they disappeared from view. That night, Harold lay awake in his king-size bed, staring at the ceiling. The house creaked and settled around him, its emptiness more pronounced than ever. He could still see those 5 children the way they moved as a unit, protecting each other. The oldest girl's watchful eyes reminded him of Margaret. The wall clock struck midnight. Harold turned over, pulling Margaret's pillow closer. For the first time in 3 years, the silence felt like something he could change. Sleep eluded him as faces of 5 children danced behind his closed eyes, their laughter echoing in his imagination, filling the empty corners of his too-quiet house. The wall clock ticked steadily, counting down to dawn. Harold returned to the orphanage the next morning, his hands shaking slightly as he signed in. Mrs. Chin's surprise was evident. Back so soon, Mr. Bennett? The children I saw yesterday, he said. The 5 siblings. Could you tell me about them? Mrs. Chin's expression softened. Follow me? They walked to a small conference room with a window overlooking the playground. The siblings were there again, huddled together on a bench. That's Sophia, Mrs. Chun pointed to the oldest girl. She's 14. Been taking care of her siblings since they arrived 2 years ago. Their parents died in a car accident. Harold watched as Sophia helped the youngest with a juice box. And the others? Maya and Mia are the twins, both 10. That's James, he's 8. And little Sarah, she's 6. Mrs. Chun paused. They're remarkable children. Sophia makes sure they all do their homework. The twins are gifted artists. James can grow anything. He started our vegetable garden. And Sarah, well, she's the heart of the group. Why hasn't anyone adopted them? Mrs. Chun sighed. Most people don't want 5 children, especially with a teenager. We've had offers to take 2 or 3, but Sophia refuses to be separated. Can't blame her. A knock interrupted them. Sophia stood in the doorway, her dark eyes scrutinizing Harold. Mrs. Chun? Sarah skinned her knee. Come in, Sophia. This is Mr. Bennett. He'd like to meet you and your siblings. Sophia's posture stiffened. Why? Just to talk, Harold said softly. If that's okay. Sophia studied him for a long moment. I'll get the others. Minutes later, all 5 children filed in. The twins wore matching yellow dresses, their hair in elaborate braids. James clutched a small potted plant. Little Sarah's knee sported a fresh Band-Aid. Hi, Harold said, suddenly nervous. I'm Harold. Are you a social worker? Maya, or was it Mia? Asked. No, I'm just interested in getting to know you all. Sophia crossed her arms. Why? Because you remind me of something important. Harold met her gaze. Family should stick together. James stepped forward, holding out his plant. Do you like gardening? I grew this from a seed. It's beautiful. Harold examined the small sprout. I have a garden at home. Vegetables mostly. Sarah perked up. Do you grow cookies? The twins giggled. Even Sophia's lips twitched. No cookies in my garden, Harold smiled. But I bake them sometimes. Really? Sarah's eyes widened. What kind? Chocolate chip. My wife's recipe. Harold's voice softened. She would have loved to meet you all. Would have? Sophia caught the past tense. She passed away 3 years ago. The room fell quiet. Sarah moved closer to Sophia, who automatically wrapped an arm around her sister. I'm sorry, Sophia said, her voice gentler. The twins settled on either side of Harold, pulling out sketchbooks. Want to see our drawings? Mia asked. We're working on a comic book, Maya added. For the next hour, Harold immersed himself in their world. The twins showed him elaborate superhero stories. James explained his gardening techniques. Sarah told him about her stuffed animal collection. Sophia watched, alert but gradually relaxing. Mrs. Chun returned as they were finishing. Mr. Bennett, could I speak with you privately? In her office, she looked troubled. I should tell you, there's another couple interested in adopting. They want the twins and Sarah. Harold's stomach clenched. Separating them? They can't take all 5. She hesitated. They're meeting the children tomorrow. No. The word came out sharper than intended. Mr. Bennett? I want to apply. For all of them. Mrs. Chun blinked. That's unusual. Your age. I'm 68, not dead. I own my home outright. I have savings, investments, a good pension. These children need a home. Together. The approval process is rigorous. And with 5 children, I'll do whatever it takes. A knock interrupted them. Richard Maxwell, the department supervisor, entered without waiting for a response. Mrs. Chen, I heard we had a potential adopter. His eyes narrowed at Harold. You're interested in adopting? Yes. Harold straightened in his chair. All 5 siblings. Maxwell's laugh was sharp. Surely you're joking. A single man your age? 5 children? I'm completely serious. Mr. Bennett. Maxwell's voice dripped condescension. Be realistic. You're practically 70. These children need stability, a future. They need to stay together, Harold countered. And I can provide that. I'll be overseeing this case personally, Maxwell said. Mrs. Chun, prepare the necessary paperwork. Mr. Bennett, I suggest you reconsider. Thoroughly. After Maxwell left, Mrs. Chun gave Harold an apologetic look. He's traditional in his views. Will he block the adoption? Not if you meet all requirements. She handed him a thick packet. But he'll scrutinize everything. Harold took the papers, his jaw set. When can I see the children again? Tomorrow afternoon. But Mr. Bennett. She paused. Are you sure about this? Through the window, Harold watched the siblings heading inside for dinner. Sophia helped Sarah with her shoelaces again. The twins skipped ahead, and James carefully carried his plant. More sure than I've been about anything in a long time. That night, Harold sat in his study, adoption papers spread across his desk. The wall clock ticked past midnight as he worked, filling out form after form. Margaret's photo watched from the corner of his desk. I know what you'd say, Maggie, he murmured. You'd say I'm crazy. He smiled. But you'd help me buy 5 beds tomorrow. The empty house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The adoption interview room felt smaller than it should. Harold adjusted his tie, aware of Maxwell's eyes boring into him from across the table. Let's begin, Maxwell said, opening a thick folder. Mr. Bennett, you're 68 years old, widowed, living alone. What makes you think you can handle 5 children? I have the resources and the desire dash. Resources aren't everything, Maxwell cut in. These children need active parents. Someone who can keep up with them for the next decade or more. Harold's lawyer, Tom Mitchell, cleared his throat. My client's medical records show he's in excellent health for his age. For his age, Maxwell emphasized. And what about the heart condition? Harold's fingers tightened on his armrest. It's minor. Manageable. Minor today. What about in 5 years? 10. Maxwell shuffled through papers. Your house. 4 bedrooms? 5, including the study. I'm converting it. In the neighborhood? Rather quiet, isn't it? Mostly retirees? There are several families with children, Harold countered. The elementary school is 3 blocks away. Maxwell made a note. In your experience with children? I was a teacher before moving into administration. 20 years ago, Tom intervened. Mr. Bennett's financial statements clearly show dash. Yes, let's discuss finances. Maxwell pulled out another document. Substantial savings. Good pension. But 5 children? Private school? College? I've done the calculations, Harold said. I can provide for them. Until when? Maxwell's pen tapped the table. What happens when you're gone? The room fell silent. Harold leaned forward. I have life insurance. Trust funds arranged. Everything planned. Planning for your death isn't exactly reassuring. Planning for their future is responsible, Tom countered. The interview dragged on for 2 hours. By the end, Harold's shirt stuck to his back, but he hadn't wavered. Outside, Tom gripped his shoulder. That was rough, but you held up well. Will it be enough? Maxwell's looking for reasons to say no. We need to be perfect. Perfect proved challenging. The neighborhood committee meeting that evening turned tense quickly. 5 children? Mrs. Peterson from next door sputtered. In our quiet community? They're good kids, Harold insisted. Well-behaved? That's not the point, Mr. Rodriguez said. This is a retirement neighborhood. We chose it for peace and quiet. Things change, Harold replied. People change. His phone buzzed. Sarah, the social worker. Harold? The children are asking to visit. Would tomorrow work? His heart lifted. Yes, absolutely. The house needed work. Harold stayed up late, clearing out his study. Margaret's books, her collection of porcelain birds, all carefully packed away. By morning, the room stood empty, waiting. The children arrived at noon. Sophia entered first, watchful as ever. The twins darted past her, exploring. James headed straight for the garden. Sarah clutched her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide. "It's big," she whispered. "Too big for one person," Harold agreed. Sophia studied the photos on the mantel. "Your wife?" "Margaret. She loved children. Why didn't you have any?" "We couldn't. Medical issues." Sophia's expression softened slightly. "And now you want 5? Better late than never." The twins thundered down the stairs. "Can we see our room?" "Rooms," Harold corrected. "You'll each have your own." "Well, you twins might want to share." Sarah tugged his sleeve. "Where will my rabbit live?" "Wherever you want." James burst in from the garden. "There's space for tomatoes." "And cucumbers." For a moment, the house felt alive. Then the doorbell rang. Maxwell stood on the porch, flanked by 2 social workers. Surprise inspection. The next hour was excruciating. Maxwell noted every imperfection. Stairs too steep for young children, no child locks on cabinets, garden tools not properly secured. "We'll address everything," Harold promised. "There's also the matter of your past," Maxwell said. "The labor dispute at your company?" Harold stiffened. "That was resolved 20 years ago. A wrongful termination suit. Questions about your judgment. I fought for an employee's rights. Won the case." Maxwell made another note. "The committee will want to discuss this." After they left, Sophia lingered behind. "You shouldn't want us," she said abruptly. "Why not?" "We're complicated. Difficult. I have nightmares." The twins never stop moving. James talks to his plants. Sarah cries for our parents. She took a breath. "You're old. You live alone. You have a nice, quiet life." "Too quiet." "You don't understand, Dash. No, you don't understand." Harold's voice was firm. "I've lived the nice, quiet life. It's overrated. Your parents, they knew what mattered. Family. Together." Sophia's eyes glistened. "They'll never let you have us." "You heard him. Watch me try." That night, after the children left, Harold sat in his empty study. The wall clock ticked midnight. His phone lit up. An email from Maxwell. Initial review suggests significant concerns, age-related limitations, financial strain of multiple children. Recommend considering alternatives. Harold deleted the email. On his desk, 5 folders lay open, 1 for each child. School records, medical histories, favorite foods, fears, dreams. He knew them all by heart now. The house creaked, as if adjusting to the possibility of new life. In the garden, James's newly planted tomato seedling reached for the sky. Harold touched Margaret's photo. "I'm not letting them be split up, Maggie. Whatever it takes." Outside, a black car drove slowly past his house. Maxwell, watching, waiting for him to give up. Harold switched on his desk lamp and pulled out more adoption papers. The night stretched ahead, full of possibilities and fear, but mostly determination. 5 children needed a home. Together. The first weekend with all 5 children staying over started at 7 a.m. with a crash. Harold rushed downstairs to find the twins surrounded by fallen pots and pans. "We wanted to make breakfast," Maya said sheepishly. "Like Mom used to," Mia added. Before Harold could respond, Sarah's scream pierced the air. He found her in the bathroom, toothpaste everywhere. The cap was stuck, she sniffled. "James!" Sophia's voice carried from the garden. "You can't dig there." Harold looked out the window. James knelt in the flower bed, surrounded by uprooted petunias. "But tomatoes need morning sun," James protested. The doorbell rang. Harold's stomach dropped. Mrs. Peterson from next door, her lips pressed thin. "Mr. Bennett," she said. "The noise." "I apologize. The children are just Dash. Children?" She peered past him. Her eyes widened at the chaos visible in the living room. "All 5? Already?" "Trial weekend," Harold explained. "I see." Her tone suggested she saw too much. "The neighborhood committee will want to discuss this." Inside, something else crashed. The twins' voices rose in argument. "She took my brush." "It's my brush. We have the same brush." Harold closed the door on Mrs. Peterson's disapproving face. In the kitchen, Sophia was attempting damage control, wiping up spilled juice while directing traffic. "Maya, pick up those pans." "Mia, help Sarah clean the bathroom." "James, get in here and wash your hands." "I've got this," Harold said. Sophia's laugh held no humor. Do you? The morning deteriorated. Sarah couldn't find her rabbit. The twins argued over clothes. James tracked mud through the house. By noon, when the doorbell rang again, Harold felt like he'd run a marathon. This time it was Maxwell and his team. Routine inspection. The social workers spread through the house, tablets in hand. Maxwell surveyed the chaos with poorly concealed satisfaction. Quite a scene, Mr. Bennett. We're adjusting, Harold said. Clearly, Maxwell picked up a fallen cushion. And the noise complaints? Harold's head snapped up. Already 3 calls this morning. Maxwell made a note. Mrs. Peterson was quite detailed. A loud thump from upstairs made everyone look up. Sarah's wail followed. She pushed me. Did not. Did too. Maxwell's pen scratched across his paper. Children need structure, Mr. Bennett. Discipline. It's their first morning here, and you're already overwhelmed. Before Harold could respond, his chest tightened. The familiar squeeze that had sent him to Dr. Patterson. He gripped the back of a chair, trying to steady his breathing. Sophia appeared at his side. Are you okay? Fine, he managed. Just need water. Maxwell's eyes narrowed. Your heart condition? Minor issue. Harold straightened with effort. Nothing serious. We have a report here. Maxwell pulled out a paper. Anonymous concern about your health. Frequent doctor visits. Medication. We protect our sources, Mr. Bennett. Maxwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. The children's welfare comes first. The inspection continued. Every fault noted. No child-proof locks on cabinets. Stairs too steep. Garden tools not properly stored. Medication not secured. We'll need to suspend visitation, Maxwell announced finally. 5 faces appeared at the top of the stairs. Sarah clutched her found rabbit, tears streaming. No! James rushed down. We just planted tomatoes. The twins followed. We'll be quieter. This isn't about noise. Maxwell checked his papers. Safety concerns. Health issues. And, yes, a previous incident we need to investigate. What incident? Harold demanded. A labor dispute from your executive days. Wrongful termination allegations. Character concerns. Sophia stepped forward. That's not fair. Life rarely is. Maxwell gestured to his team. Children, pack your things. Harold watched helplessly as the children gathered their overnight bags. Sarah clung to his leg until a social worker pried her away. The twins hugged him silently. James left his potted tomato plant on the counter. Sophia was last. You tried, she said quietly. I'm not done trying. After they left, Harold sat in his empty house. The wall clock ticked an accusation. His phone buzzed Tom, his lawyer. Bad news. They're offering a compromise. What compromise? They'll fast-track approval for 3 children. The twins and Sarah. Harold's fist clenched. No. Harold, be reasonable. 3 is better than none. Not for them. Not for Sophia and James. Maxwell's building a case against you. The health issues, the noise complaints, the labor dispute. That case was about protecting an employee from discrimination. I know, but Maxwell's spinning it. Making you look difficult, combative? Harold stood, moving to the window. The garden looked incomplete. James's half-planted tomatoes waiting. I won't separate them, Tom. Then we need a new strategy. Maxwell's supervisor. Is his brother-in-law? Harold watched a black car cruise past his house. They're watching me, gathering evidence. Every mistake, every misstep. Harold touched his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart. Steady despite everything. Schedule a meeting, he said, with the full adoption committee. Harold, I'm mortgaging the house. Silence on the line. Then, you're serious? 5 children need a home. Together. After hanging up, Harold walked through his quiet house. Signs of the morning's chaos remained. Scattered toys, muddy footprints, a half-eaten breakfast. The wall clock struck 6. Dinner time. Somewhere across town. 5 siblings ate together, wondering if they'd found a home only to lose it again. Harold picked up James's tomato plant. It needed water, love, patience. Like family. Harold sat in Tom's office, staring at documents spread across the desk. His lawyer's expression was grim. Look at this pattern, Tom pointed to a spreadsheet. Maxwell's rejected every single parent adoption in the past year. But look closer. Harold leaned in. What am I seeing? Race, Harold. Every rejected application involved interracial adoption. The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. You're saying Maxwell's been systematically preventing interracial adoptions, especially with older applicants? Tom pulled out another file. I have statements from 3 other families. Can we prove it? The Williams case last month. Retired couple, white, tried to adopt 2 black children. Maxwell cited cultural concerns. Tom's finger traced down the page. The Patels, Indian couple, denied adoption of a white toddler. Cultural fit issues. Harold's hands clenched. And me? Elderly white man wanting to adopt 5 black children? You never had a chance. Not with Maxwell in charge. The door opened. Sarah, Harold's social worker, rushed in. You need to see this. She placed her tablet on the desk. Internal emails. Maxwell's been coordinating with other supervisors. They call it cultural preservation. Harold read, his anger growing. They're separating families based on race? It's not official policy, Sarah said. But it's happening. Systematically. Tom straightened. This is grounds for an investigation. The children, Harold interrupted. What happens to them while we fight this? Sarah touched his arm. There's more. The couple interested in the twins and Sarah. Maxwell fast-tracked their application. They're white. Harold stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. When? Final approval meeting tomorrow. No. Harold turned to Tom. How fast can you file? Civil rights violation? Today. But Harold, these cases take time. We don't have time. Sarah's phone buzzed. Her face paled. They're moving up the meeting. 2 hours. Harold checked his watch. Where? Department headquarters downtown. But you can't just dash. He was already moving. Watch me. The downtown office bustled with afternoon activity. Harold strode past security, Tom and Sarah hurrying behind. Sir, you need a visitor's pass, a guard called. Already have one. Harold held up his old badge. From this morning, the elevators seemed to crawl. On the 6th floor, voices carried from the conference room. The twins have already bonded with the Whitmans, Maxwell was saying. Clean break from the older siblings would be best. Harold pushed open the door. 8 heads turned. A clean break? His voice cut through the silence. Like your pattern of breaking up families based on race? Maxwell stood. This is a closed meeting. Perfect. Harold dropped the files on the table. Let's discuss your cultural preservation program. One of the committee members, an older woman, picked up a document. Her eyes widened. Mr. Maxwell, what is this? Taken out of context dash. Context? Tom stepped forward. Like the Williams case? The Patels? Every interracial adoption you've blocked? The room erupted in murmurs. Maxwell's face reddened. These children need stable homes dash. Together, Harold cut in. In a home that loves them for who they are. You're 68, and there's siblings who've lost everything except each other. Harold turned to the committee. You want stability? I'm offering a home where they stay together, where their bond isn't broken because of one man's prejudice. The older woman studied another document. These approval rates, they're drastically skewed. Statistical anomaly, Maxwell stammered. 27 rejected interracial adoptions in 12 months. Sarah stepped forward. That's not anomaly. That's policy. Harold's chest tightened, but he forced himself steady. My age? Question it. My health? Monitor it. But don't let bias tear apart a family that's already lost too much. A man at the end of the table cleared his throat. I move to suspend Mr. Maxwell, pending investigation. Seconded, the older woman said immediately. Maxwell's face purpled. You can't dash. We can, and we will. The man stood. This committee exists to protect children, not prejudice. Security arrived to escort Maxwell out. As he passed Harold, he hissed, They'll never last with you. Watch them thrive, Harold replied. The next hour passed in a blur of statements and signatures. When it ended, the older woman, Dr. Roberts, head of the committee, approached Harold. We'll need to review everything. Properly this time. How long? A week. Maybe 2. She hesitated. The children. Let them come home, Harold said. During the review, Dr. Roberts studied him. Your health reports? Monitor me. Send nurses. Whatever you need. Harold met her gaze. But don't make them wait alone. She nodded slowly. Conditional placement. During review, Harold's phone rang as they left the building. Sophia. They said we can come back, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Yes. A pause. Maxwell. Won't be a problem anymore. Another pause longer. The Whitmans wanted the twins and Sarah. Not happening. He heard her shaky exhale. When can we come home? Home. The word hung in the air. Tonight, Harold said. All of you? In the background, he heard Sarah squeal, James talking about his tomatoes, the twins arguing about room decoration. We're loud, Sophia warned. Messy. Complicated. Perfect. That night, Harold watched 5 children settle into his house. Sarah arranged her stuffed animals. James watered his plants. The twins pinned drawings to their walls. Sophia lingered in the study. Her room now. Why did you fight so hard, she asked. Harold touched Margaret's photo, now on his bedside table. Because family belongs together. No matter what anyone says. The wall clock struck 9. Bedtime chaos ensued. Bathroom schedules, forgotten toothbrushes, last-minute drinks of water. Finally, silence fell. Harold checked each room. 5 children safe. Together. The black car that had watched his house was gone, along with the man who'd tried to keep them apart. Tomorrow would bring paperwork, reviews, adjustments. But tonight, his too-quiet house had transformed. In a home, the committee room felt different without Maxwell present. Harold sat straighter in his chair, facing the panel of 7 officials who held his family's future in their hands. Mr. Bennett, Dr. Roberts began, we have a compromise to propose. Harold's stomach tightened. I'm not separating them. Please hear us out. She slid a document across the table. 3 children initially. A trial period. If all goes well, the other 2 join within 6 months. No. Mr. Bennett dash. They've been separated enough. Harold pushed the paper back. All 5 or none. Tom touched his arm. Harold, consider dash no. Harold stood. You've seen the reports. The past month, they've thrived. Together. Dr. Roberts sighed. Let's review those reports, shall we? The projector hummed to life, displaying photos and documents. The first showed James's garden, flourishing with tomatoes and cucumbers. Next, the twins' report cards straight as. Sarah's nightmares have decreased, a child psychologist testified via video. Having her siblings nearby provides security. Another document. Sophia's teacher reporting improved social interaction, less anxiety. The children are adapting well, Dr. Roberts admitted. But our concerns about your health remain. Harold pulled out his own folder. Dr. Patterson's latest report. Heart condition stable. Regular monitoring in place. Emergency contacts established. And the financial strain? House mortgage approved yesterday. Investment portfolio liquidated. College funds established. A murmur rippled through the committee. Harold continued, I've arranged weekly support. Tutoring, counseling, household help. Everything they need. The neighborhood complaints have stopped. Harold smiled slightly. Amazing what fresh cookies can do for neighbor relations. Dr. Roberts leaned forward. Why all 5, Mr. Bennett? Why not make it easier on yourself? Because they're not a math problem to solve. They're family. Harold's voice strengthened. You've read their file. 2 years in the system. Multiple homes willing to take 1 or 2, but not all. Everyone wanting to make it easier. Meanwhile, 5 children hold each other through nightmares, help with homework, keep each other strong. The room fell silent. Sophia gave up a solo placement last year, Harold continued. Better school, wealthy family. She refused to leave her siblings. The twins could have gone to an arts program. James was offered a home with a greenhouse. Sarah, his voice caught. Sarah cries when she's separated from them for 1 day. And you want 6 months? Dr. Roberts studied him. And when it gets difficult? When you're tired? Overwhelmed? I'll handle it. How? The same way they have. Together. A soft knock interrupted them. Sarah, the social worker, entered with a large envelope. Community petition, she announced. Over 300 signatures supporting Mr. Bennett's adoption. The committee members passed the document around. Harold recognized names, neighbors, teachers, even Mrs. Peterson. They've changed our neighborhood, Harold said quietly. James teaches gardening to the retired couples. The twins started in our club. Sarah's smile. He paused. My wife always said a house needs laughter. She was right. Dr. Roberts gathered the papers. We'll need to deliberate. How long? Given the circumstances. She checked her watch. Can you bring the children by at 4? Harold's heart jumped. Today. She nodded. We'll have our decision then. The next hours crawled. Harold paced his house, straightening already straight rooms at 3. He drove to the children's schools. Sophia was first to the car. Well, for a clock meeting. She texted the twins, who appeared minutes later with Sarah. James joined them last, clutching a potted plant. For good luck, he explained. They arrived at the department building at 3:55. The elevator ride was silent. 5 children and 1 man holding their breath. A black car sat in the parking lot. Maxwell, watching. He can't hurt us anymore, Harold assured them. The committee room door opened at exactly 4. Dr. Roberts stood alone, her expression unreadable. Come in, please. They entered as they did everything together. Sophia leading, twins flanking Sarah, James bringing up the rear. Harold followed, his heart steady despite everything. Dr. Roberts cleared her throat. We've reviewed all documentation, considered every angle. Sarah's hand found Harold's, then Sophia's. The twins pressed close. James hugged his plant. Mr. Bennett, your age is unusual for adopting 5 children. Your health requires monitoring. The financial commitment is substantial. Harold felt Sophia tense beside him. However, Dr. Roberts smiled. Love doesn't follow standard protocols. She lifted a stack of papers. Conditional approval, pending final home inspection next week. All 5 children. She emphasized the last words. Together, the room exploded. Sarah leaped into Harold's arms. The twins danced. James nearly dropped his plant. Even Sophia cried. Conditions? Harold asked over the chaos. Monthly health checks, quarterly financial reviews, regular home visits. Dr. Roberts watched the celebrating children. But something tells me you'll manage. Outside, the black car was gone. Maxwell had seen enough. That evening, Harold sat in his chair, watching 5 children argue over pizza toppings. The wall clock ticked peacefully, marking moments of their new life. His phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Final papers ready tomorrow. 9 a.m. Harold looked at his family, because that's what they were now. 5 beautiful, loud, complicated reasons to live. The wall clock struck 7. Bedtime chaos would begin soon. Homework needed checking. Gardens needed watering. Stories needed telling. Harold Bennett, 68 years old, widowed, heart condition and all, couldn't wait. The morning of the final approval dawned bright and cold. Harold straightened his tie, checking his reflection. Behind him, chaos erupted. Dad! Sarah won't get out of the bathroom. Dad! The word still caught him off guard. Sophia had started 3 days ago, the others following naturally. 5 minutes, Sarah, he called. But my hair's not right. The twins thundered down the stairs. We can't find our permission slips. Field trip today, Maya explained. Art museum, Mia added. Harold pulled the signed forms from his folder. On the counter, James burst in from the garden. The tomatoes are ripe. Breakfast first, Harold reminded him. Big day. They gathered at the table. 6 place settings now, no empty chairs. Sarah finally emerged, hair expertly braided by Sophia. Nervous? Sophia asked quietly, passing Harold the coffee. No, he smiled. Ready? The department building looked different today. Friendlier. They rode the elevator together, a well-practiced unit now. Dr. Roberts waited in her office, papers arranged neatly. Good morning, Bennett family. Family. Official now. Before we begin, she said, the home inspection report. Harold held his breath. Passed. With commendations. She smiled. The evaluator was particularly impressed with the garden. James beamed. Now, the final papers. She slid them forward. Once signed, you're legally a family. Harold picked up the pen. 5 children pressed close, watching him sign their future into reality. Your turn, Sophia. She signed her name, tears smudging the ink slightly. The twins wrote their names in identical careful script. James added a small flower doodle next to his signature. Sarah, tongue between her teeth, formed each letter perfectly. "Congratulations," Dr. Roberts said softly. "It's done." They emerged into sunlight, official family photos clutched in hand. Harold's phone buzzed continuously. Messages from neighbors, teachers, Sarah the social worker. "Ice cream," he suggested. "Before lunch?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. Special occasion. The ice cream parlor wasn't ready for them. 5 excited children, one grinning father, multiple flavors debated and sampled. "Remember our first dinner?" James asked, spooning chocolate. "Burned spaghetti," the twins chorused. "Pizza rescue," Sarah added. Sophia caught Harold's eye. "You didn't give up." "Never will." Back home, reality resumed. Homework needed attention. Sarah's tooth was loose. The twins had art projects due. "Dad," James called from the garden. "Come see." The tomato plants bent heavy with fruit, red and ripe. "First harvest," James said proudly. "Family salad tonight," Harold decided. The afternoon passed in comfortable chaos. Harold moved between children, checking math problems, admiring artwork, listening to Sarah practice reading. The wall clock struck 5 when the doorbell rang. Mrs. Peterson stood outside, holding a cake. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. Officially, behind her, other neighbors gathered. Mr. Rodriguez with his famous empanadas. The Goldsteins bringing drinks. The Chin family carrying chairs. "We thought you might want to celebrate, Mrs. Peterson said. The house filled with people, laughter, life. James gave garden tours. The twins showed their artwork. Sarah charmed everyone with her missing tooth story. Sophia helped Harold in the kitchen, passing plates. "Okay," he asked softly. "Better than okay." She watched her siblings. "Perfect." The party lasted into evening. As neighbors left, each hugged the children. Mrs. Peterson kissed Harold's cheek. "You've changed this street," she whispered. "For the better." After cleanup, bath time, story time, Harold checked each room. Sarah slept surrounded by stuffed animals, smile peaceful. The twins whispered sisterly secrets, giggling. James's desk held tomorrow's garden plans. Sophia sat on her bed, looking at old photos. "Want company?" She nodded. "Mom and Dad would have liked you," she said quietly. Harold sat beside her. "Tell me about them." Dad loved gardening too. Mom baked cookies every Sunday. She touched a photo. "They were so happy." "They still are," Harold said gently, watching their children grow. "Together." Sophia leaned against him. "When Maxwell tried to separate us." "Never happening." "I know." She smiled. "Dad." Later, in his room, Harold touched Margaret's photo. "Wish you could see them, Maggie. Our children." The wall clock ticked softly, counting moments of their new life. Downstairs, 5 lunchboxes waited for morning. 5 backpacks hung neatly. 5 pairs of shoes lined up. And one father's heart, full beyond measure. A car passed outside. Not black, not watching, just passing. Harold Bennett, father of 5, slept soundly for the first time in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More homework. More garden adventures. More love. He couldn't wait. 3 months passed like a whirlwind. Harold stood in his garden, surveying James's tomato empire, while waiting for the home inspector. "She's here," Sarah called from the window. Ms. Thompson, the department inspector, walked the property with practiced eyes. Different from Maxwell's hostile scrutiny, her inspection felt supportive. "The garden's flourishing," she noted, watching James tend his plants. "Wait till you taste the tomatoes," Harold smiled. Inside, evidence of family life filled every corner. Sarah's artwork covered the fridge. The twins' latest science project dominated the dining table. Sophia's debate team trophies lined a shelf. "How's the routine working?" Ms. Thompson asked. "We've found our rhythm." Harold checked his watch. "School pickup in an hour." Sophia has debate practice. Twins have art club. James tends a garden. Sarah dash, dance class. Sarah pirouette past them. Ms. Thompson made notes. "And your health?" "Monthly checkups. Blood pressure stable. Heart condition managed." "The neighbors?" A crash answered her. The twins raced through, chasing their latest science experiment. Sorry, Dad. It's for physics. Miss Thompson laughed. I see they're settled. The neighborhood adapted. Harold smiled. Block parties now. Garden club meetings. Art shows. And the children? Academically? Harold pulled out their latest report cards. Straight as for the twins. Sophia's debate team victories. James's science fair medal. Sarah's reading improvement award. Impressive, Miss Thompson noted. And emotionally, better every day. Nightmares less frequent. More smiles. Harold paused. They're healing. The inspection continued. Miss Thompson checked rooms, safety measures, food supplies. One last thing, she said. Individual interviews. Each child sat with her briefly. Harold waited, heart steady. Finally, she closed her notebook. Exemplary, Mr. Bennett. Or should I say, Dad? Harold's chest swelled with pride. After she left, James tugged his sleeve. Garden time? They worked together, father and son, tending tomatoes. Mom loved gardening, James said quietly. Tell me more. She taught me about talking to plants. Said they listen better than people sometimes. Harold nodded. Smart woman? Like Margaret? James pointed to her photo, now in the garden window. Yes. Harold touched the frame. She would have loved this. Inside, chaos erupted. The twins' science experiment had escaped. Dad, the robots and the curtains. Normal now. Perfect. Evening brought homework time. Harold moved between children, checking math, discussing history, listening to Sarah read. Dad, Sophia appeared. Can you help with debate prep? They sat in her room, discussing arguments. On her desk, a family photo, her birth parents beside a new one with Harold. They'd be proud, Harold said softly. Of all of us, Sophia agreed. The wall clock struck 7. Dinner chaos began. Tomato sauce. James insisted. Again, the twins groaned. From our garden, Sarah said proudly. Family dinner. Simple pasta, fresh sauce, love. Remember our first dinner here? Maya asked. Burned everything. Mia laughed. Pizza rescue, they all chorused. Harold watched them, heart full. 3 months. A lifetime. The doorbell rang. Surprise visitors, neighbors bearing news. Community garden proposal approved. Mrs. Peterson announced. Thanks to James's presentation. James beamed. Can I design it? Lead gardener, Mr. Rodriguez confirmed. More changes. More growth. Bath time brought the usual water wars. Story time. 5 children piled on a Harold's bed. Our story, Sarah requested. Which part? When you fought for us. Harold told it, modified for younger ears. The fight for family. Love winning. Later, checking rooms, he found Sophia awake. Okay. She nodded. Just happy. Simple truth. The twins slept surrounded by books and gadgets. James's room smelled of earth and green things. Sarah clutched her rabbit, smiling in sleep. Harold's phone buzzed. Dr. Patterson confirming tomorrow's checkup. Regular monitoring. Small price for love. The wall clock ticked peace. Outside, gardens grew. Inside, family flourished. Harold Bennett, father of 5, sat in his chair. Not quiet anymore. Better. Perfect. 1 year. Harold stood in his transformed living room, watching his family prepare for the celebration. The banners crooked, Sophia called from the ladder. Left side up, the twins directed in unison. No, down. Up. James burst in from the garden, arms full of flowers. Fresh centerpieces. Sarah danced between them all, streamers trailing. Can we do cake now? Guess first, Harold reminded them. The wall clock struck 2. Right on time, the doorbell rang. Dr. Roberts stood outside, beaming. Behind her, a crowd gathered, neighbors, teachers, friends. Even Ms. Thompson, the inspector. 1 year, Dr. Roberts hugged each child. Look at you all. The house filled quickly. James led garden tours, proudly showing off his community garden plans. The twins displayed their science fair medals. Sarah performed her dance recital routine. Sophia showed her debate team trophies. Harold watched from his chair, heart full. Quite a change, Mrs. Peterson said, sitting beside him. Remember when I complained about the noise? Now you complain when it's too quiet. Harold smiled. The street needed this. We all did. The celebration continued. Mr. Rodriguez brought empanadas. The Goldsteins' famous cookies competed with Sarah's attempts at baking. The Chin family's children played with Sarah's growing collection of stuffed animals. Dad, Sophia called. Speech time. Harold stood, facing his gathered family, blood and chosen both. 1 year ago, he began, this house was quiet. Empty. Today, a crash from the kitchen interrupted. The twins' latest robot word passed, trailing decorations. Today, Harold continued, laughing, it's perfect. Sarah tugged his sleeve. Can I tell my part? He lifted her up. Go ahead. Daddy fought for us, she announced proudly. When the mean man wanted to split us up, he said no, all of us or none. The twins stepped forward. Then he got lawyers and showed them papers. Maya added, and made the mean man go away. Mia finished. James clutched his garden journal. He gave us a home. Together. Sophia, eyes shining, completed the story. He became our dad, our hero. Harold's vision blurred. Dr. Roberts raised her glass. To the Bennett family. To love. Sarah chirped. To gardens. James added. To science. The twins chimed. To together, Sophia said softly. The party flowed into evening. Children played. Adults chatted. Family, in all its forms later. As guests left, Harold checked rooms one last time. Sarah's walls, once bare, now burst with art and photos. The twins' room, a happy chaos of books, experiments, and dreams. James's space, part bedroom, part greenhouse, wholly his. Sophia, in the study-turned-bedroom, sat surrounded by debate notes and college brochures. Big decisions coming, she said as he entered. You'll be ready, thanks to you. He sat beside her. Tell me about the colleges. Local ones? She smiled. Can't go too far. Garden needs tending. James has it covered. Sarah needs help with math. Twins can handle it. You need you, Harold finished. But not at the expense of your dreams, Sophia hugged him. My dream came true last year. When you fought for us, the wall clock struck 9. Bath time, chaos began. Dad, Maya used all the hot water. Did not. Did too. Normal. Perfect. Later, Harold sat in his chair. The house settled around him, creaking with life and love. Margaret's photo caught moonlight. See what you started, Maggie? One yes to love. Changed everything. His phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Patterson. Annual checkup tomorrow. Bring the kids? Harold smiled. Family doctor now. Outside, James's garden bloomed under stars. Inside, 5 children slept safely. The wall clock ticked, counting moments of joy. Harold Bennett, 69 years old, father of 5, closed his eyes. Not alone. Never again. Dad? Sarah stood in her pajamas, clutching her rabbit. Story. He lifted her onto his lap. The others appeared, drawn by tradition. Which one? Ours, they chorused. Harold began. Once, there was a very quiet house. 5 children snuggled close as he told their story. Love winning. Family forming. Hearts healing. Together.